If you can spare me the next 7 minutes of your life, I will save you about 10 years of striving and stressing out about being in a different place than where you really are. Right where you are is where God is going to meet you and is growing you and loving you. When we can open up to that reality, our life becomes a little easier and a lot more fruitful. And the goal of our life isn't just to create fruit, it's to be with God and enjoy Him forever. That's my belief. At the same time, the fruit is really valuable. It serves other people. We feel a sense of meaning. We get so caught up with trying to be in the next stage. To if we're in our 20s, we want to be in our 30s, we want to be in our 40s, we want to have the house, the family, the money, the trauma dealt with. And those things are good to desire. At the same time, wanting something that isn't in our stage can lead us to sadness, can lead us to frustration and stress, and then miss what God is doing in the midst of that. I've been part of a church for the last 5 years, and the average age is 78. So there's a lot of people with wisdom and experience, and they look at me and my life and people younger than me and say, wow, if I could have my 20s back, if I could have my 30s back. And it's really given me a lot of perspective to be grateful for the season that I'm in and not wish for, oh, once this debt is paid off or something else. They're at the end of their life, looking back at their life and seeing the meaning and seeing the regrets that they've had. And it's allowed me to pause and to be grateful. So when you're in your 70s, you're gonna wish you had your 50s. If you're in your 60s, you're gonna wish you had your 40s. Being present to whatever decade you are in and not worrying about the success of somebody else, even in your age group, and attending to the life that God's given you. There's this folklore story of a woodcutter and how he believed that he had died. So one day this woodcutter was going out in the forest and gathering wood, and he didn't have enough to his desires, so he climbed up on the branch, started to saw it off at the trunk. And a priest came along and said, "Sir, what are you doing? If you cut the branch off at the trunk, you are going to fall and then die." And the man said, "Oh, whatever." Then he paused and he thought, oh, it's a priest. I've been trained to heed what authority says, so maybe he's right. Oh, well, okay, whatever. I'm just gonna keep going anyway. So he ends up cutting off the branch, and sure enough, the branch falls, he falls, and he thud, hits the ground. And he's shocked. He's like, oh my goodness, I fell. And he started to feel around for his legs, and he felt the branch. And I said, the priest was right. I did fall, and so I must be dead. And so the villagers come along and they see him and they, oh my goodness, and they try to help him grab the branch out from under him and they help him stand up. Then the man falls over. And they said, why are you falling over? And he said, well, don't you know I'm dead? And they said, well, no, I don't think you're dead. So no, I'm dead. I did. And he said the story again. He said, I fell. He said, okay, well, let's try to stand you up again. And they did. And then he fell over. And they thought, wow, he keeps falling over. Maybe he really is dead. So they said, oh no, he's dead. So they hoisted him up and said, we'll give you a proper burial. So they take him back to the village singing a sad song of mourning and death. People came rushing out and saying, oh no, what happened? They said, well, our woodcutter was lost and wandering in the woods, and so he died. And the man sprang up and he said, no, you're telling the story wrong. You have to get it right. I was chopping wood, I cut the branch off and I fell and I died. And the priest comes along and said, well, I told you so. So then the story goes on, and his wife ends up telling him, you're not dead. And the point of the story is that when we believe, because authority has told us certain things, external pressures have told us certain things, the power of influence can convince us of reality, when in fact it's not. So we'll miss the signs along the way. If we're in our 20s and we've been told that when you're in your 30s, once you have a house, you're gonna have it made, you will be aching for that 30-year-old self. Versus saying, you know what, no, what's happening here is actually a really good thing. It's part of the process. And so I'm actually gonna share with you the top 5 regrets that elderly have when they are facing their deathbed. So none of us can add more years to our life. We don't fully know when our last day is, but as Paul says, don't invest in the fading things, but invest in eternal things. Jesus says, don't store up for yourself treasures on earth where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven. Well-known resource by Bronnie Ware is an Australian nurse, and they spent a lot of time caring for dying patients. And these are the top 5 regrets. The first one, I wish I was more true to myself and not what others expected of me. Not what the priest expected, not what my parents expected, but really what God was doing within me. Now, I'm adding that because I'm speaking to Christians here on this channel. So that person could have been non-Christian or not, but being true to how God has created you and your true self, not the false self that really is trying to build this life that is temporal, that isn't really solid. The second one is, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. Oftentimes we think we need to work harder, work more, earn more, have more. At the end of our life, we're not going to say, I wish I'd have had $100 more, or I wish I'd have given one more week to work. We would have wanted to do things that really brought lasting fruit and joy, not just to our lives, but those around us, to have significance and meaning. A lot of the elderly people at my church are really discerning whether or not to have meaning in their lives or to despair, to give and be fruitful with their lives, or to think, oh no, my time is gone. It's now the younger generation. They are still very much alive and active and learning. Till the day they die, they're gonna be learning and giving wisdom because they're learning to respond to God. The third one is, I wish I'd expressed my feelings more, to be more true to what's happening, really to just describe reality. So living in reality is much more important than choosing some false version of success. The fourth one is, I wish I had stayed more in touch with my friends. So investing in relationships, the things that matter. This could be family, this could be people in your life that have meaning or that are really valuable. Fifth one is, I wish I'd have let myself be happier. One of my favorite rabbinic parables is a rabbi is talking to a young pupil and he says, one day you will face God and you will be judged for every permitted pleasure you refused to enjoy. I'll say that again. You will be judged for every permitted pleasure you refused to enjoy. So many times we think we have to be in self-denial or ignore our desires. And while there's a lot of wisdom in restraining and not giving into certain things because they don't lead to life, but so many things are actually life-giving that we refuse to give ourselves to because of what a priest says, and nothing wrong with listening to a priest. I'm just saying we don't stop and consider, what is God inviting me into? What is really aligned with the truth of where I am in my life, in my season, my 20s, 30s, 40s, or 70s, 80s, 90s? Or am I ascribing to a narrative that isn't mine, that isn't necessarily what I'm supposed to be living? To save yourself 10 years of life is to be present in wherever space that you are in, finding God there. That is how you're going to find true freedom. That's how I'm learning to find true freedom, and I pray this blesses you. I will see you in the next video.